I want you to do a quick thought experiment. Picture Jesus. What do you see? For hundreds of millions of people in the Western world, and perhaps across the globe, a specific image instantly comes to mind. He is a man with pale, placid features. He has long, flowing, light brown hair, perhaps a neatly trimmed beard, and very often he has blue eyes. This is the Jesus of countless Sunday school classrooms, of stained glass windows, of paintings, and of Hollywood films. This image, exemplified by Warner Sallman's 1940 painting, The Head of Christ, is one of the most reproduced images in human history, printed an estimated 500 million times. It has, for generations, become the default, the definitive, the real face of Jesus. But there's a profound and unavoidable historical problem. This image is almost certainly wrong. The historical Jesus, the man who walked the hills of Galilee, was a first-century Jewish man from the Middle East. And the Jesus of our popular imagination looks by every historical and anthropological measure like a 19th century or 20th century European. So how did this happen? How did a dark-skinned Jewish rabbi from a colonized land in the Middle East get transformed into a white Anglo-European savior? Was this just an innocent artistic convention? Or was it a deliberate whitewashing, a theological and political act that shaped the way we see Christianity itself? Today, we are tracing the remarkable 2,000-year artistic and theological journey of the face of Jesus. This is the story of how that face was created, how it was standardized, and how it came to conquer the world and the debate over what it means for us today. The New Testament, our primary source, is completely silent on the matter. The Gospel writers were concerned with what Jesus taught and did, not with his physical appearance. Unlike descriptions of figures like David or Moses, there is no mention of his height, his hair color, or his facial features. The earliest non-biblical writers are equally silent. This lack of description is, in itself, significant. It suggests his appearance was likely unremarkable. The prophet Isaiah, in a passage later Christians applied to Jesus, wrote that the suffering servant had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. Isaiah 53. Banding dua. So, with no physical description, how can we know what he might have looked like? We can't know specifically, but we can make some excellent evidence-based deductions using history and forensic anthropology. Jesus was a Galilean Jew of the 1st century. This means we must ask, what did other Galilean Jews of the 1st century look like? Archaeological remains, ancient textual descriptions, and forensic analysis of skulls from that region and time period all point to a consistent picture. In 2001, the forensic anthropologist Richard Neve led a team that famously reconstructed the head of a typical 1st century Galilean man based on such skulls. While not a photo of Jesus, it is perhaps the most scientifically plausible approximation we have. The image is of a man with a broad, swarthy, olive-skinned face, consistent with a life lived outdoors in a hot, Middle Eastern climate. Dark brown or black eyes, short, dark, tightly curled perhaps, woolly hair, and a short, dark beard. This image of short hair is particularly important. The long, flowing, almost effeminate hair of Renaissance paintings is a later artistic convention. The Apostle Paul, a contemporary of Jesus, wrote in 1 Corinthians 11 that if a man has long hair, it is a disgrace to him. This suggests that long hair was not the norm for Jewish men of the era. It was more associated with pagan philosophers or barbarians in the Roman mind. So, our historical baseline is this. The historical Jesus was definitively a Middle Eastern man of color, who looked like his Jewish contemporaries in Galilee. He did not look like a modern European. So where did that image come from? The first images of Jesus don't appear until the 3rd and 4th centuries, over 200 years after his death. We find them in the catacombs of Rome, the underground burial places of the early, often persecuted Christian community, and what they show is shocking to modern eyes. The Jesus in these earliest paintings is beardless, with short cropped hair, wearing a simple Roman tunic. He is depicted not as a 1st century Jew, but as a young Roman man. He is often shown as the Good Shepherd, a youthful, gentle figure carrying a lamb on his shoulders. Why? The artists weren't aiming for historical accuracy. They were doing two things. 1. Safety, in a hostile Roman Empire. They depicted Jesus in a way that was culturally familiar and non-threatening. 2. Symbolism. They borrowed imagery directly from their own pagan culture. This Good Shepherd image was a direct copy of Roman depictions of Apollo or Hermes, who were also often shown as beardless youths carrying a ram. For the first Christian artists, the goal was not to paint a portrait of Jesus, but to communicate his role, teacher, savior, shepherd, using the visual language their audience understood. The first great transformation of Jesus' face happened in the 4th century, and it was a direct result of politics. In 313 AD, Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity. By 380 AD, it had become the official state religion of the Roman Empire. Christianity was no longer a small persecuted sect. It was now the faith of the emperor. It was the religion of power. And the old image of a humble, beardless shepherd boy just wouldn't cut it anymore. The church needed a new image. One that conveyed Jesus' divinity, his power, and his authority as the king of the universe. So where did they turn for inspiration? To the most powerful, authoritative images they knew. The imperial images of the Roman gods. Specifically, the new image of Jesus was modeled on depictions of the king of the gods, Zeus or Jupiter. Image, side-by-side comparison of an early Christ Pantocrator and a statue of Zeus. From this, the official face of Jesus inherited its key features. The long center-parted hair, the full, majestic beard, the severe, regal, all-knowing expression, the halo, which was borrowed directly from pagan depictions of the sun god, Sol Invictus, or other divine figures. This new image was called the Christ Pantocrator, Christ the Or. It wasn't about what Jesus looked like, it was about what he was, the divine emperor of the cosmos. This Zeus became the standard dominant image in both Byzantine Eastern Orthodoxy and, for a time, in the West. For the next 1,000 years, it was an image of power, not race. This powerful, imperial image of Jesus remained the standard until the Second Great Transformation, the Italian Renaissance in the 14th and 15th centuries. This was a time of humanism, of a new interest in realism and the beauty of the human form. Artists like Giotto, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael began to paint biblical scenes with a new earthly realism. They wanted to make Jesus and the saints look like real, relatable people, not just stiff, divine icons. But who were the real people they used as models? They were the people around them. They painted Italians. When Leonardo da Vinci painted The Last Supper, he wasn't trying to reconstruct a 1st century Passover in Jerusalem. He was painting a 15th century Italian dinner party, complete with Italian models, Italian architecture, and Italian food. This was a natural process of enculturation. Artists depicted the divine in a way that was relatable and beautiful to their own people. As Christianity spread north, German artists like Albrecht Dürer painted a very German-looking Jesus. Dutch and Flemish painters like Rubens and Rembrandt painted a very Northern European-looking Jesus. The problem was that, due to the immense cultural, political, and artistic power of Renaissance Europe, this new, localized, European image of Jesus now, with lighter skin, finer features, and often lighter hair and eyes, became the new global standard. It wasn't just the Italian Jesus, it was now presented as Jesus. This brings us to the final, and most critical, part of the story. What happens when this now standardized European image of Jesus becomes the face of a religion that is spread globally through colonization and missionary work? From the 16th to the 20th centuries, European empires, Spanish, Portuguese, French, British conquered vast portions of the globe, and they didn't just bring their armies, their flags, and their economic systems. They brought their religion, and their religion's central figure looked just like them. In Africa, in South America, in Asia, in North America, this white European Jesus was presented to indigenous and non-white populations as the one true image of the Savior of the world. It was an image exported by the dominant colonial power. This implicitly, and sometimes explicitly, linked whiteness with holiness, with divinity, with power. The message was clear: God looks like us, the colonizers. This process reached its absolute peak in 20th century America. The development of mass printing technologies allowed this image to be reproduced on an industrial scale, and no image was more successful than Warner Salmon's Head of Christ. Salmon's painting, created in 1940, is the perfect synthesis of this entire history. It's a soft focus, idealized, and distinctly Northern European American image. It's approachable, gentle, and profoundly not Jewish. It was a marketing phenomenon distributed to millions of soldiers during World War II, and then placed in countless churches, Sunday schools, and homes. For generations of Americans, this was the literal face of Jesus. The historical Middle Eastern Jew was completely erased and replaced by a white, Americanized, Protestant savior. So, we have a clear, traceable history. The face of Jesus has been on a 2,000-year journey, from an unknown 1st century Jewish man of color to a beardless 3rd century Roman shepherd, to a bearded 4th century imperial god king, to a white 15th century Italian man to, finally, a 20th century mass-produced American icon. The historical inaccuracy is indisputable. The real question, the one that sparks the intense debate, is: does it matter? This is where the arguments begin. On one side, many Christians argue, no, it doesn't really matter. The image is just a symbol. Jesus is a universal savior for all people. Therefore, it is natural and even good for different cultures to depict him in their own image. African Christians depict a black Jesus. Korean Christians depict a Korean Jesus. The white European Jesus is just the European American cultural version. It's a symbol, not a photograph. The message of Christ's love is what's universal, not his melanin. To focus on his race is to miss the point of his message. On the other side, the whitewashing argument. A growing number of theologians, historians, and believers argue that it absolutely matters, especially in a multiracial post-colonial society like America. They argue that this isn't just enculturation, it's whitewashing, an act of cultural and theological erasure with real-world consequences. They argue it implicitly supports white supremacy and Eurocentrism, presenting whiteness as the default, the standard, even the divine. It makes Christianity feel like a white man's religion, which can be a stumbling block, alienating people of color from a faith that was, in fact, born in the Middle East, not Europe. It fundamentally betrays the historical reality of Jesus's own identity. Jesus was not white. He was a brown-skinned, colonized Jew, living under the thumb of the white European Roman Empire. To make him look like his oppressors is to reverse the entire narrative and strip his message of its potent, countercultural power. This is the debate we are left with. The history is clear. The implications are not. So, here is the question for you. Is the popular white Jesus image a harmless, relatable symbol of faith, a valid cultural expression, where the message is all that truly matters? Or is it a dangerous historical distortion, a whitewashing of history that carries heavy theological and racial baggage? Is it an image that we, in our modern multicultural world, have a moral and theological obligation to challenge, correct, and dissenter in favor of a more historically accurate representation? Let me know your thoughts, respectfully, in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the history of an image fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the hidden stories and complex evolutions of faith and history. Thanks for watching.